Okay, so you just finished up grade 11. Summer's been going on for a couple weeks right now, and a lot of students have already fallen for this misconception, which is that you've got some time before the grade 12 stress really kicks in. Now, I say it's a misconception for a reason, right? Because if you actually want to be standing out when applying to top universities in Canada, you don't have time to be waiting until September. And so that's what we're going to be talking about in this video from Admission Prep is we're going to be breaking down exactly what you need to be doing over this summer as an incoming grade 12 student to be ahead of 90% of other students that are going to be applying for top universities. Okay, so let's be real for a second. Universities nowadays, they don't want just marks. They don't just want you to have some volunteering, right? They want to see stories. They want to see that you care about something bigger than yourself. And the best way to show that is to launch your own passion project or an initiative that you care about that has like a big impact on your school, community, things like that. Now, I don't mean that you need to like solve cancer or anything like that, but do keep this in mind. Is a top school like Queen's got over 50,000 applications last year. And you're going to see similar numbers for many of the top schools within Canada. So if that's the goal, the question kind of becomes like, what are you going to do to stand out? And sometimes that can be a little bit scary. So here's our advice for that and how you approach that is for these next few months before applications are due, make sure you have something known as the 2-2-1 formula built up. Fancy stuff. Here's what I mean by that is the first thing is that you want to have a member role in place. Think about this as like being a team player or contributing to a community, club, sport. If you're part of like a sports team, you already have this. If you're part of a club at your school, you already have this. Think of simple things like that. The second one is that you want to have some leadership roles. Now, what these are is you want to be stepping up and taking the reins of like an already existing team, club, or organization. Think like student council president, think captain of a soccer team, things along those lines. Now, ideally, walking into the summer, you already have these in place. If you don't, you got to get going on this pretty quick to get yourself caught back up. But assuming you have these, then the big one that's going to make a difference on your application is to have the initiator roles ready and in place. Now, you might not have any idea what to do, and so to give you an idea of what an initiator role is, it's a passion project, a club, initiative, something that you spearhead yourself. And our suggestion for like figuring out what you want to do is go over to the UN Sustainable Goals, look at their website, and pick one of the ones that speaks to you. There's 17 different options. So probably one of them is going to be something that you personally care about and that you're passionate about. And then ask yourself, how can I create something real around this that actually solves this problem or at least contributes to it? We're not going to solve poverty overnight, but it might look something like, starting a podcast, hosting a local workshop. You might choose to like build an app. You might create like a digital blog or some sort of content around that. Or you might even just do something like leading a community fundraiser or like some sort of like initiative to help with that. And here's our pro tip is if you can take 20 minutes to like read the mission and core values of your dream school, think like McGill, UFT, UBC, whichever ones you're passionate about, they all have their values available on their website. And so if you can find a way and a clear story for aligning your project, not only with the sustainable goals, but what your school is actually looking for and cares about from their students, then all of a sudden you have a way that you can create a story that the admissions officers can't ignore. And so see if you can build up on that. Okay, so next up, you're going to figure out how you're going to flex on these applications, but how you're going to do it strategically. Now, the reason I say that is because you're not going to have the chance to talk about every little thing that you've done since grade 1. I'm sure you're a good person. I'm sure there's a lot of those things, but you're just not going to have the space to talk about them on university applications when the time comes. And so over this summer, you want to put together a brag sheet that identifies the moments that actually matter. The stories that convey how good of a person you are and how much of an impact you've actually had on your school and community in a short and concise way. Because honestly, sometimes on these applications, you're going to have like a restriction of 250 words to be able to convey some of those points. Now, if you're going to do this at the last second when applications come up, a lot of this is going to be rushed. A lot of this is going to be last minute. You might not pick the best stories to be able to actually convey your points. But if you can put together that brag sheet right now over the summer, it'll put you miles ahead of everybody else. Now, in terms of the format that we recommend to do that in, like I said, you're going to be restricted on your words and you need to be able to have a explanation that packs a punch right away. And so what we recommend for that is to use something known as the star squared method or format. And it looks just like this. What you're going to be talking about is the situation, the task, the action, the result, and the reflection that you got from that. So what you want to be asking yourself is, when I was doing this role or when I was part of this initiative, what was the situation I was in and that my community was in? From there, what was I responsible for actually doing, or like what was the task that I was assigned? What was the action or the steps that you took to actually solve that problem? What were the results? And ideally, if you can come up with like some numerical things or quantitative ways to show this, even better. And the final, and I would say the most critical part, is the reflection. This is what makes this story feel authentic and actually convey what you've learned, is you want to talk about how you grew as a person and how being part of this role or this initiative or this leadership role actually changed you as a person. And so once you've done that, you should end up with this nice little brag sheet of about 4 to 5 different roles with a few sentences per activity describing the context that you were in and the impacts that you've made. And not just like did this thing and helped out with this thing, but why it actually mattered in your community. And so the best part is then this sheet becomes golden when it's time for you to actually put together a reference letter, you're writing out those university applications, or even when you're on interviews, you can talk about all this stuff and not have to stress about putting together the best stories at the last second. Okay, final one. Let's talk about something that can sneak up on you really, really fast when it comes to grade 12, which is the actual university application deadlines. Now, you can have the perfect initiator roles, you can have them in the perfect star squared format. As soon as somebody reads your application, their heartstrings are pulled. But in the scramble of everything that you have to do in grade 12, if you actually end up missing the university deadline, doesn't really make it that easy to get accepted at that point. And so here's your summer task: is what you want to consider is every different university that you want to apply to is going to have different deadlines. Some of them as early as like early December, while others are going to go into January and maybe even later on, but you do want to be aware of these deadlines. And so take the time to make a list of the application deadlines for all of the universities that you're considering, and then create 2 more days or options for yourself. Now, the first one is going to be where you're going to have the first draft of your application ready to go. And our recommendation is to have this at least be 30 days before the application deadline. So if that's due on December 15th, you want to have that draft ready to go by November 15th. And the reason for that is you're probably not going to submit your first draft in. So you want to keep the time to be able to make edits and refinements on your applications based off of the feedback that you're getting. From there, you want to set up a second deadline for yourself, which is the day that you're going to actually submit the application in. And our recommendation is to have this be 15 days before the deadline. So again, let's assume December 15th is when your application is due. You want to have this ready to go by December 1st. And the reason for that is there's so many students every single year that wait until the final day that the application is due. And then all of a sudden, the application portal collapses, or like there's some sort of delay, or they miss out on a time zone difference, or 100 of other reasons, and then their application never ends up getting submitted in. And so just save yourself the hassle. Don't worry about that. And ideally have that submitted in 15 days before the application is due. Now, this is going to keep you from cramming in December and trying to like figure this all out when you also have to do your homework and your finals and your grad prep. And so just treat your application a little bit like a school project. But instead of it being worth kind of like 20% of your grade, it's going to be worth you actually getting accepted into the university. And just make sure that you have that pre-planned over this rest of the summer. And that's everything. So that's what you should be doing as a student going into grade 12 this upcoming year. And so just quickly to recap, what you want to do is you want to launch a passion project tied to a UN goal plus your dream school's values. You want to ideally craft a brag sheet like a storyteller using the star squared format. You want to know your real deadlines and set your own draft and submission dates. And if you can do even one of these, you'll be ahead of like 90% of other applicants. Do all 3 of these, and your future self and your future acceptance letters will end up thanking you. And so with that, hope you enjoyed. Let us know in the comments if there's anything else that you want us to build a video for. And we'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.